To this December meeting of the Governance Committee, our only meeting in December, I should note.
You sure?
I'm pretty sure we're going to try not to have
Know
another
what we'll
one
get asked.
in December if we can avoid it. I'll take the roll first. Assistant Mayor Kelly. Here. Councillor Tabor.
Here.
Councillor Lombardi.
Here.
I am Councillor Cook here, and I am here as well. And we are joined by our Deputy City Manager and our legal counsel today. So did everyone have a chance to review the minutes from the November 12th meeting?
Yes.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The minutes are approved. We are starting out our discussion today with the volunteer, going back to our volunteer training manual, where we think we're in pretty close to final form here. Maybe today we're in final form. And we'll continue the discussion today. I don't know that we'll get through the whole agenda, but we're going to get through, at least this is a priority item for today, and try to get through the review of fees, which is new as well today.
So I have a question, because it seems like I got two versions. I don't know if they're identical or not.
Okay.
But the one is titled Introduction, and the other is titled Get File Attachment.
I don't know which one.
They both have the same date on them, so
Well, which one is
I did-
posted in the meeting packet?
Yeah, if you go to the meeting packet, that one is
Yeah.
accurate, and that's the one I'm sharing on the screen.
okay. That's the one, Get File Attachment.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, that should be the accurate final version that we've gone over
Yeah. Too many times.
a lot. Yes, exactly. Hopefully we're at final at this stage. So did everyone have a chance to look through this? I know that it's hard because it's such a, it feels like a long document, but I don't think that the changes were significant at all. I think that the major changes that we are talking about, there's this wonderful section, by the way, let me highlight, on relationship with the city council that also includes some general guidelines for Robert's rules, which I think is
Yeah.
Yep.
really helpful here, instead of
In one handy table.
yes, one little table. It doesn't have the the chart we had in here before, so I think that's helpful to have.
I thought both relationship things, relationship with staff and city council, were useful.
Yes, exactly. I feel like that this is now much clearer than where we started. I like the relationships with the public, relationships
Yeah.
with other boards, business relation. I mean, this all just really helps us volunteers understand kind of what their role is, and I think it's softer. The language is softer generally as well, less demanding, more instructive, which is also, I think, the goal that Councilor Lombardi was concerned about, making sure that it didn't feel like it was a heavy weight.
Yeah. And not a hammer.
Exactly. And so, as you'll see, this is pretty much intact. What's helpful here today is we also have the policies at the back. There's this guideline on social media policy, which I think is also helpful. And there's a reminder about open records
Yeah.
and what happens if you're in violation. So I think that that's really critical. And note that,
Sorry,
Welcome.
hung upstairs.
that's right, welcome. When volunteers are going through this handbook, they also will have, like others, kind of this opportunity to go through and click through and read our ethics ordinance and to read other pieces. So I think that that's really important for the public to know too, is that you're not just getting a handbook, but you're going to have you have the opportunity in your training to go through and read the ordinances as they sit now, too. So you're aware of those. The organizational chart. And then here's where we have the policies that are linked. So, and those will be linked when they're going in and doing their training. So they won't be going through here and reading them at the end. They'll be linked to them. So, so those are now kind of all intact.
I guess I have a question about format. I wonder if basic policy or of this draft should be printed and handed to people. That you don't have the links that way to other documents, but it kind of, there's a lot of meat in this that is, someone can reference easily, without logging onto their computer, without, following links, without, I just wonder, I don't know what the cost of that would be, because we have a lot of volunteers, and a lot of commissions, and, but just a thought.
Certainly, we could make available for those that would like a hard copy. We can make it clear that they're welcome to, get a hard copy from the clerk's office, and that would leave it within the discretion of the individual board member, because you're right, some folks really like to have that hard copy, but others, frankly, they'll just lose it, and they would just as soon not have it. So maybe if we just give them the option to get a hard copy at the clerk's office, we'd be glad to provide one or something along that line.
Yeah. I think that would be helpful for somebody who's struggled with reading it online. That might actually be helpful. But I think one of the key elements also to this is that the goal is to send them a link to the training.
Correct.
And to have them go in and do the training and click through all the materials that they need to read, so that we have a record that they've signed off
on those.
on everything.
I understand that, but I'm also thinking of, in terms of referencing later,
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah. I think a by request policy.
that works, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, I'm on committee with a bunch of old farts,
It's totally fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still like to read books in hard copy. So I can understand that. Yeah.
I will just also add the system through which we push out the policies electronically does allow you, if you didn't want to wait to have the city print one off for you, it does allow you to print.
Okay.
So you do have that option to print a copy for what that's worth. But we'd be, I'm sure, happy to keep some extra copies on hand in the city clerk's office so that any board member who would like a hard copy, happy to provide it.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or concerns about the training manual before we move on?
Well, I did the homework assignment, asked my wife to read it.
Great.
She's got an MBA, she's been in business, she's a minister, runs a parish. She thought it was a little daunting, but not unfair.
Okay.
It's a lot.
We've talked about that.
Yeah.
Is this something that we need to, potentially introduce, and then if we have a lot of people complaining about it, then revisit it down the road in 6 months and see how we're doing? Maybe you can put that back on the agenda in 6 months, and if the
Yeah.
council adopts it.
I think it was more length than severity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any way to tighten it up?
And I might suggest if the chairs of the various committees, provide a little summary and say, you'll be getting a communication, we can draft that for them so that they can discuss it with their boards, and their boards can know that it's coming. It just kind of might help with the introduction of this. So I can work with some language that maybe board committee chairs can share with their whole committee just as we try and roll it out.
Okay. I would love this if we could introduce this, well, if we get to a place where we're comfortable today, and this goes to the council for the December 16th meeting, the idea that we could provide language for their first meeting in January would be really helpful.
Is this going to be ready to go electronic January 1st?
Do
We
we
don't,
think?
I don't think we have the training modules.
No, we do. Everything would be ready. We just need to input the board members, and maybe we'll just do it chunk by chunk. You know, we'll do a couple of boards that are meeting early in January and put them in.
Okay,
And we'll keep rolling.
okay. I know I have a few that meet late in the month, so
Yeah.
that might be easier to do bit by bit. And, you know, those who've already been serving know a lot of this material already, so
Right.
worst case scenario, we give them a heads up in January, and they end up signing everything or reviewing everything
Yep.
by February or, and then we're in a place where new people, anybody who's new, who's appointed, it's much easier to add one person.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that something that we have the capability of doing at the clerk's office so that it's not a complicated, I want to make sure this isn't too complicated
Right,
for the
right.
staff to implement?
Right.
We'll figure the best process out.
Okay,
So if I just clarify, so for purposes of going live and linking to the policies, I don't think that's a heavy lift for staff. I think the city attorney might have been referencing the orientation.
Yes.
Yeah.
The videos, video orientations, which we can work on putting together or updating if there are some out there, but we need to work on updating those videos, which may not be ready first thing January 1st. Because we have, I think this references lectures for the right to know law and and we have not addressed really the land use boards at all
okay.
here.
I know that in the past, the land use boards have had their own training, kind of a separate training, and my understanding is we won't stop doing that, just because we launched this.
Well, they asked the legal department, I know, to come in and talk with the new members, and we bring in the municipal association to do lectures for them as requested. But we could also provide some of that via video. We haven't done our vignettes of training yet.
Okay. Okay. So in January, we would be talking about the policy going live, the handbook going live, the links to the different policies.
Going back.
Okay. That seems fair. Are there any other questions, concerns about the handbook? And Counselor Tabor, I will put it on our agenda to just see how we're doing in July.
Sure.
If this gets passed at the council level. No?
No, I think it's been worked over pretty well.
Yeah. I think it was a lot to absorb prior to this. It's a lot to absorb post this. I think to me, the goal of it is to make sure we're covering the city and making sure that volunteers or committee members understand the guidelines to it. And I think this, on top of the new procurement checks and balances going through section by section, makes it more absorbable, especially with the vignettes and things like that.
I think we might get feedback from the council
Yeah.
when they see this. We also might get feedback from committee chairs.
Yes.
And maybe it's worthwhile, putting it out to the committee chairs before we put it out in general, I don't know. Because they're going to
Well, I
have they're going to have a responsibility to
Yeah.
have their committee do it.
My concern about that is committee chairs rotate, not, every committee every 2 years, but my concern would be that we could get a set of opinions that vary so drastically different now than, if new chairs are elected. So, while I agree with you, I like, the Councilor Tabor's point of revisiting it in 6 months after the chairs have had to live through it. I know a lot of the committees are going to be re-electing new chairs or re-electing chairs in January. So that's my only concern, is that it could be pretty subjective to, some people may look at this and say, this is too much to read, and other people look at it and say, thank you for being so thorough.
Right.
So I feel like
Yeah.
letting it live for 6 months. But I agree, you know what I mean? I think that's the easiest way, is letting it live for 6 months and then seeking out their feedback. But I agree.
And that might be, I'm presuming it would get introduced through the committee. Would it be introduced under your name, Councilor Cook?
I can do that. I can put it under my name from the governance committee, if the governance committee approves it today.
And there'd be the handbook and the volunteer policy.
Yes.
So, and I raise this because of your big homework assignment and the number of pages. Just raising the issue, do you put it on the December agenda as almost like a request for first reading, like this is coming forward January, whatever the first meeting in January for approval, because I believe it's an early January meeting, or is it?
January 6th.
January 6th. Because of how much there is to digest, I didn't know if that might be something the committee would consider, just to give people time for questions and give them an opportunity to maybe do their own homework and look at it holistically.
Whatever the committee thinks is reasonable, I think would be fine. That may delay implementation slightly, but I don't think anyone's meeting before January 6th, likely. I doubt we have very many
Calendar is.
many committees meeting before then.
But I like the idea of bringing it out to the public so that we can get feedback for the January 6th meeting. And that would inform public comment at the January 6th meeting. Committee chairs might spend their New Year's Day reading it. You won't.
I won't.
You already know it.
Yeah, we have the advantage of being here and having read it. That's a good thing. I'll be holding all of you responsible for reading this. But, yeah, it's that I see no problem with that kind of timeline. I think it's important that the council has time to digest it. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's look briefly then at the volunteer training and standards of conduct and ethics policy. This was essentially what we discussed last time, but it's the combination of the two, so that we have one policy. So there isn't a huge shift here. Not really. This was all here before.
Yes, and
There's
this
just
is the new part that's merged, the
Exactly.
K.
Section
Letter
K,
yes.
volunteer orientation and training. And this just brings that piece in as, another responsibility. These are the things you need to be aware of, including volunteer training.
Yep.
So were there any questions about this merge or addition here?
That's good.
Okay. Okay.
I don't think so, no.
Right, if everyone's comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Then I would entertain a motion to move to approve the volunteer training and standards of conduct and ethics policy
Second? Oh, is this a combo?
Yeah.
Okay, second.
No, just a motion.
Oh, just a motion.
Motion?
Motion.
Okay, second.
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion?
Oh, seems good.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And then, as an addendum to the policy, the training manual, the volunteer training manual. Can I get a motion to approve the volunteer training manual for review by the council?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So I will go ahead and put this on the agenda for an introduction on the 16th for a request for approval on January 6th. Okay. Okay. All right. Yay. We'll do the first piece. The second thing on our agenda today is to discuss the administrative ordinance review. I have two things to look at, and I kept this item on the agenda so that everyone, it's a little reminder that we're talking about dividing Chapter 1 into Chapters 1 and 2 first, and I have that shared here above so everybody can see what Chapters 1 and 2 look like. I don't know if I can zoom in a little. There. So, currently all of this sits kind of together, but it's dividing out the finance, anything related to finance. Give you guys a second to look at this and see if you see anything that you want to flag as a problem. I think that they're all pretty self-explanatory.
What are the edits to the city seal?
Just the language is old, so I was updating the language.
Oh, okay.
It's minor.
Yeah, so we still have some things to review,
Mhm.
clearly, in the administrative ordinance and in finance as well.
Yeah, yeah.
But this is kind of the recommended route looking at that came from staff.
The most organic flow of
Yeah.
edit.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's good.
Let's figure we, sorry.
Then that leads to Chapter 3, which is, what, I forget.
Is it? I don't know, actually. I'm happy to look.
I was just going to look, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what Chapter 3 is, but Chapter 2 has been reserved for many, many years
Yeah.
and unused. So,
Chapter 3, chapter 3 is public health.
it's public health, okay.
So our thinking was to make all the, what I call the substantive edits first to the various sections through this committee and the city council. Then we'll shuffle them all around
Yeah.
once we're kind of done with them, because we'll have to update the numbers in other portions of the statute. So we figured, do the substance first, get the final order of what we want to see, and then we can do the housekeeping.
Yeah.
And you'll note that, in Section 2, we have procurement procedures and disposition of property that we've already approved. It says it's pending, but this is my older version of this. That is done. Today we're going to talk about adoption of fees. So we will have most of the finance piece done. So we will almost be in a place to renumber that, but we'll wait to renumber the whole thing
Yeah,
once
one
we're
and two.
done. Yeah. So,
That as we're also kind of looking at other sections of the ordinance, it may be we find something else that's sitting in some other section of later in the ordinance that we may want to say, oh, this really does belong in Chapter 1 or Chapter 2. So that also gives us a little more time to look forward and beyond. And I'll update this kind of spreadsheet here. Not spreadsheet, but the structure as we
Okay.
finish stuff, and that it's ready to go.
sounds great. Thank you. So on that note, we'll go to review of fees, which is, this is kind of the new piece we're looking at today. So I'm going to scroll here through the packet so everyone can see, at home can see where we are. And these are new suggested edits to adoption of fees. And I'm going to try to zoom in as well so everyone can see this at home.
Yep.
I don't know how well that's visible.
If
with
not,
blue,
you can
but-
always go to the clean version, which is beyond it, if you need be.
Yes,
Yeah.
happy to do that. So
I can,
I'll let you go to guide us through it all.
so you can see from the original ordinance that it was pretty short and sweet. Assumes that most of our fees are done through the annual budget process. And really what we have discovered over the course of the last few years is that sometimes we have needs for fees, to develop fees outside of the annual budget process. And while we have some implicit authority to do that, the city council and the city manager, we thought, well, this is the opportunity because we're cleaning up language to make it explicit, which is why you'll see in the first section, it says municipal fees not otherwise established by ordinance or law shall be adopted by city council resolution during the annual budget adoption process, or at such other times as the city council may determine to be in the best interest of the city. So making it explicit that the city council has authority to adopt fees at some other time of the year. We also wanted to make clear what was going to be excluded. This is in part due to the fact that we are likely within the new sewer ordinance when we get that next year. And even in our fats, oil, and grease and other programs that we have on the regulatory side, sometimes we enter into administrative orders, or compliance orders, and making it clear that when we set up a compliance or a fee schedule for coming into compliance or a set of penalties, if you don't do this within 60 days, through those orders, that was not covered. Like, that's expressly something that we handle from an enforcement point of view. Now, you may recall, when you look at your fee schedule, there are lots of fees in the sewer ordinance. So your basic stuff, that's, here's your application fee, all of that remains just as it is now. So inspection fees, et cetera. So that all is going to remain. It is literally just to the narrow circumstances where we might enter into an order with, say, a commercial sewer discharger who maybe is violating their permit and just building in some compliance scheduling. So just wanted to flag that that's part of what would not be something that we'd be coming to the city council to set those compliance orders. In addition, if you kind of roam around different parts of our ordinance, and if you look at kind of what has been done historically, occasionally, well, particularly with the rec department, historically, they set their own program fees for classes. And similar if they charge for an event, like a bus trip. And so we thought this would be the place to kind of make that authority express. So again, it's not for your application fees and your standard stuff, events and charges that you can predict and bring to the city council as part of the budget process. It's, we have the opportunity to run an extra summer class, and so we set those fees, or rec typically sets those fees as they're building the program and seeing what they have for teachers and help to run those various programs. And it's, from our point of view, it would be very impractical to bring this all to the city council, and it doesn't seem to have been an issue, because at least I'm not aware of a lot of issues related to that. And so we just wanted to make that express, that rec can basically continue to do what it typically does in terms of scheduling events and bus trips and, setting a reasonable administrative fee to cover the cost for that. So that is what that's all about. And, typically health and inspections don't charge for many of the trainings that they do, but we could certainly envision an occasion where, maybe they would want to in some future circumstance, to recover costs if we had to rent a room somewhere. So we just thought we'd make it broad. So that's what that section is about. It's trying to capture what is done historically by the rec department in particular. And really, that's about it for changes. Now, the fee committee, I did not address that in this section, so that is also, and the real question is, do you want to? So the fee committee was originally set up by the city manager, prior city manager. City councilors were appointed to that to help provide input and a way to bring some more process and voices into that setting of the fees, and then those fees go to the city council. Because it doesn't seem to be broken, I figured I would leave it unaddressed and let it sit as it is, but obviously it's up to the, if this committee has a different wish or desire, it's something you could certainly talk about. But that's why I did not address the fee committee in here. So,
And we voted to add a third council member, right? There was two, and the change this year was to we added a third, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then I feel like that's,
And it has a different name. I think it's the Fee Review Committee.
yeah.
So it exists only as it's not codified anywhere.
It is not codified anywhere. The mayor typically appoints, usually with
Yep.
input from the city council, one or more members of the city council to basically assist the manager and the city staff in reviewing fees prior to them going forward to the city council as part of a budget resolution or by some separate action of the city council.
So it's been fairly effective leaving that to the wishes of the mayor and the council as to whether or not they want a fee committee, but ultimately by leaving the structure where the city council does approve all fees, reduces the work of the council if there's a fee study committee to sit and review. So it benefits the council, but you may have a council at some point that wants to go through and review all the fees. So I guess,
That's why I did less. I just kind of left the structure and tried to clean up some of the pieces that we knew were outstanding. So a relatively simple change.
So is it state law that requires that fees just cover costs?
It may depend on which fee, but generally that is and I'm trying to think if it's more case law. We're not here to make money. We're here just to
Right.
cover costs.
And I think this is silent about that. I was asking, is that in the state code? Or should we consider adding that, or is that just direction we give the fee committee every year?
I'm happy to look into that. It's always been in my head that that's it, so I've never actually looked it up. Now, keep in mind, penalties are a little different than fees,
Right.
because there you're trying to bring compliance. And we do have some penalties, as you know, in the ordinance. Parking would be one of our favorite places where we put some of those penalties right into the ordinance in some shape or form. But I'm happy to look into that. It's been so ingrained in me, I couldn't tell you when I last looked at that. Like, our goal is to cover costs. And usually we don't, frankly, a lot of these fees, we don't cover costs when you actually think of the staff time and the technology behind doing a lot of what we do.
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
would it be valuable to clarify what the fee-setting authority is?
I'm certainly happy to look at that
Yeah.
and report back, and I could try and draft some language, but it may vary a little bit depending on the nature of the fees.
Right. And then the other question I had was, I was just trying to do a scenario of payments in lieu that we're looking at in housing, which could be kind of dynamic and negotiated with developers there'd been discussion of that going to the fee committee, and we'd use the RKG study to set a price if a developer doesn't want to build affordable units, how much is the payment in lieu? And we have the study to back that up, but should they change every year? Should they be dynamic? Does this allow them to be dynamic?
I think certainly the language, if we didn't touch this language at all, I think payments in lieu could easily fall under this and come to the city council like the other fees. But there's no reason not to put some express language in here for that purpose. But let me look at that in particular, because I was thinking about, of course, my favorite topics of water, sewer, fats, oil, grease, and stormwater. But happy to look at the housing one and see how that might fit in here and whether we want to flag pieces like that. Yep.
Yeah, we
That's the
used
only
to.
line in the housing ordinance that I wondered about, actually, was the fee in lieu of.
Right.
Say, well, what is that? You know, so-
Payment in lieu.
Payment in lieu.
Yeah.
Well, we used to allow parking payments in lieu, didn't we?
Years and years ago, I
Yeah.
think you could.
In the
Yeah,
80s.
from all of our collective times, yeah.
I'm just happened to, try to Google the state law here while you're talking, but I got 41:9, but it does have a provision that the fees and amount has to be reasonably calculated to cover the town's regulatory costs.
That sounds about right.
So
Yeah.
I will have to search for the one that applies to cities, but I assume it's something very similar.
Yeah, that, as you read that language, it is something like that Bob Sullivan has quoted to me over the years.
Over and over. It is written,
It is written, not just Bob.
not
Bob
just
speak.
Bob's law.
Yes.
Yeah.
The advantage of including that as well is then it's really easy to go back to anybody who says that the fees are too high and say, this is the state law, we're not allowed to charge you more than our costs.
We're not making money.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Good.
Are there other questions? These changes, these potential changes?
Would this work for stormwater? Stormwater enterprise
Yes,
fund?
it would certainly, because it would be treated just like water and sewer.
Yeah.
And as you can see from the fee structure, we carry all of those.
Good.
I particularly like the section that's added about trainings, classes, special events, because that's been something that has always kind of bothered me, that the fee committee doesn't set those, but at the same time, we set them on a regular basis. And I think that dovetails well into where we're going with encumbrance too, because we have to, when we get to our encumbrance discussion, we're going to talk about not just outdoor dining, but special events, anything that encumbers, we have to have kind of some guidance there, I think, and we're not consistent. So I think this helps to clarify how those fees are set. Yeah. And there's a clean copy here. I'm going to share the clean copy
Yeah.
for everyone at home so that it's much more clear when you're looking at it
I
this
know.
way.
Yeah,
That's why I
yeah.
like to do both. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
looking at that
The blue.
without looking at the marked up one.
So, looks good to me. Okay.
I'll work on those two pieces.
Okay.
And bring back answers or changes or both at the next meeting.
Sounds great. All right, good. All right, I'm going to go back to our agenda so everyone can see where we are. The next item on the agenda, this is very preliminary, so I think we're not gonna have a very long meeting today, is to look at the encumbrance ordinance and policies. And so here, I'm gonna stop sharing so that I can bring that up for everyone. I can get the AI assistant to go away so that it lets me do that. Okay. And let me share where we currently are. Let's see. I think this is the one. Aha. So this is our current outdoor dining encumbrance permit ordinance. And there was a request that came clearly from staff for us to look at this because of some concerns for the end users on their side. And so we've been asked to go through this, and so that's why I brought that request to the council to have governance look at it. So this will be the beginning of the review, is to look at this and try to clean up spaces where there were challenges for some of our restaurateurs downtown. But then I think that we should take a more holistic approach and look at encumbrance in general, because I've had some concerns expressed around events and encumbrance, and how do we calculate that, and because we don't have the best guidance in our ordinance right now around that. We fortunately have guidance now for outdoor dining, but not for those other events. And then there's a question around sandwich boards, and so how does this all work together? So I just wanted to bring this up and remind everyone of what we adopted just a year ago. It hasn't been that long. If it's okay, can you share some of the concerns that were expressed so that everyone's aware of what we're going to be working on generally?
Do you want to
Sure.
hit some of yours?
Yeah, one of the things is where to find things. I think that's the number one complaint you get from folks, because encumbrances and licenses for construction and outdoor dining and various other special events are in various chapters throughout our ordinances. So you have encumbrances generally in Chapter 8, obstructions of streets somewhere else in Chapter 8. In Chapter 9, you have public way obstructions, and again, that's a bit duplicative. You've got Chapter 11, licenses, language that says licenses need to be referred to the planning board, which we don't do. We've got 3 different policies, council policies. One on license fees for encumbering city property, another one flags projecting over city property, and there's a separate one for projecting signs. And then we have Chapter 6, which is all of the permitting fees that the clerk has that are derived by statute. The circuses come to town and all that, antiquated language. Yes. So it's true. Livestock going through the street, that sort of authority that we have in 4717. But a lot of that was converted historically into various sections of our ordinances. So this can be a narrow fix, or this could be a very broad fix. And I think working with the folks who do the encumbrances and the licenses a lot, it's hard to explain, sort of someone asking for a sign. Well, wait a minute, I did this for an encumbrance permit, now I have to do this for a sign. And so that is all a very broad statement to say whatever this committee wants us to address, we'd be happy to look at it. And it is a broad, I think it would be almost like our Chapter 1 approach. It would take pieces, to go through. But I do think it would be helpful for the public, for the council, for the staff to have one chapter that addresses all of the encumbrance issues, rather than have it dispersed throughout our ordinances, which grow organically. It's not a criticism, it's just a reality.
What are everyone's thoughts? I know this sounds like a huge amount to tackle.
Yeah.
I don't think it's changing so much things as putting them together and making sure they're consistent.
Do we,
Exactly.
and I feel like we've done this before, it is in this before, do we reference, like under certain encumbrance, do we say, can we put things like outdoor dining encumbrance, please see this section? Or does that convolute it even more?
We have it on our websites for various departments,
Yeah.
Public Works and Planning. We have references, city manager, to special events. We have information for people so that they can find the appropriate permit. But we don't have language in our ordinance that refers folks to other sections of ordinances that may involve encumbrances. And to clarify, the language in most of these ordinances, these ordinance chapters that I'm referencing are very short. So the actual references are not complex. They just are located in a lot of different places. So if that helps.
Okay.
I'm just looking at Chapter 8, encumbrances and injurious practices in streets. It's like, okay.
In ye old Portsmouth, you could tell that was yes,
Peddling pills,
yes.
depositing snow, rolling papers.
Some of these are fascinating, aren't they? And so would it be helpful for the committee if we put together a packet of all the encumbrance ordinances for everybody to see, so we have kind of a clearer picture? And my proposal would be to start with outdoor dining, because it's time, there's a time factor
Yeah.
here, and we want to make sure that everyone is aware of any changes that are made, that we clean those up for this coming season first. So we start that in January, and then we kind of go through the rest. I would suggest anything that directly impacts, that we know directly impacts people seasonally, like sandwich boards, and, that maybe we should front load our discussion so that we have those in place before this April-May season starts, and then get to the things like the circus and other things, kind of later on, cleaning those up and maybe even determining what we still need or don't need on the
Yeah,
books.
sale of horses and cattle.
In Market Square, I'm sure. so this is
I'm just looking through this. This is really amusing.
it's really impressive, isn't it? So this is why, we talk about cleaning up ordinances. When you don't do it for many, many years, sometimes there's a little bit more to do.
And I attempted to start that, and Councilor Lombardi, I am guilty of paper, and I printed some, so I started that, but wanted to get more direction from the committee. The other thing that would be interesting to look at, I think, are the 3 policies that exist. And that's probably something that could be edited into one. So you could have one
Right.
city council encumbrance policy, and then the timely outdoor dining ordinance, which exists already, which just would be an easy tweak. So I would be happy to help with that.
Okay, great. And, it's something that we did with art is we moved even the policies just straight into the ordinance. So that's also, I'm always amenable to less is more. So if we can, the more we can combine and make it easier for everyone, unless it's something that we absolutely can't have in ordinance, then I I think I would even entertain that.
The other issue we were talking amongst ourselves was what actually has to go to city council. We have encumbrance permits that are 30 days or less. You folks see a lot of licenses. You see a lot of projecting signs. Is there a way we look at the charter and the administration, the role of the city manager for city property, as opposed to the oversight of the city council? We can perhaps not have everything pass through council as a part of, our review of this, and we can report back on that to see if we can interpret the charter in such a way that short-term encumbrances, might be something the city council gives the authority of the city manager to approve, and then there's more of a reporting to council at council meetings. There have been, 5 licenses granted, but again, that's sort of an open question to think about when we're looking at all these encumbrances and how to address them, openly and efficiently.
Whenever I see, a vote to approve a sign, let's say, and then I see all the public works, what they have to have approval of, I don't know why we have to see that.
Yeah, could it be just administrative?
Yeah.
Right.
I think staff would appreciate it if there were more administrative processes and less that has to go on to the agenda.
Yeah.
And it would make it more efficient for, the people who are asking for those, like projecting signs. They have to wait
Right.
for a city council meeting, and that tends to aggravate people.
Yeah.
And so if they're in conformance with the ordinance,
Yeah.
Streamline.
Right.
yeah, does the
Yeah.
council need to see it? If they're not in conformance with the ordinance, then,
If they're looking for a waiver of some sort, yeah.
yeah.
Right. Yeah, and the licensed folks who aren't always watching the clock for the expiration date of their licenses. It's the same as the poor projecting sign folks, like, oops, it comes up on them quickly, and sometimes we have to scramble with them
Yeah, I
because they're
think
not
we-
tracking the agenda,
Right.
and the deadlines for the agenda.
Like, we had to approve an encumbrance for a dumpster on Lincoln Ave, I think.
Yeah.
Does that really rise to the council level?
Right.
It's not really a policy issue.
I think there was a question of why is it taking that long to
Well,
build,
I raised that question.
to prove that's a heck of a
Right, it
kitchen.
was for a kitchen. It wasn't a kitchen, it was a bathroom.
Yeah, it's
If they were taking, 3 months to redo my bathroom, I'd be kind of angry.
So that's the question, right? If we could simplify that through this process.
Streamline it, yeah.
So everybody is amenable to starting kind of that process in January. That would be our only January meeting, unfortunately, which I think is
I
January.
think that's fortunate.
January 13th, I think, is the date. I was looking.
I will not be here. but
Okay.
That's okay.
No excuses.
So,
I'll be on my honeymoon.
I know.
well, okay, so we won't fault you for missing the one. That's fine. January 13th, I was looking at that date because January 6th is city council. So that's, and then I am unfortunately away for the next few weeks.
Yeah, the 20th is also MLK Day and Inauguration Day.
Yes. So it's a little complicated, and since I'm away, then it will be very difficult to
Yes.
meet.
The 13th?
The 13th.
Yeah.
So January 13th, and that's when we would start the encumbrance discussion. We'll start with the outdoor dining recommendations that have come back from our restaurateurs, and
Hopefully adoption of fees.
yes, and we'll finish up adoption of fees. Then,
Do you want to set some tentative dates for February
yes, that was
so that,
yeah, that was what I didn't put on the agenda, but I wanted to make sure we had a few dates in place. I'll also come to all of you with a proposed schedule for the year in January, So the tentative dates, January 13th. And in order to avoid city council, we're talking about February the 10th. And we'll go ahead and put, tentatively mark February the 24th. Okay,
I have that kind of,
penciled in.
continue, that schedule continued in my calendars.
Okay. So those
Can you
would,
repeat that last date?
the 24th of February, so February 10th and February 24th. And then I'll get you a more robust schedule for January, proposed schedule for January. That makes sense to everyone?
Yep.
And
But only the 13th in January, is that right?
only the 13th in January. I'm sorry, I have college tours for my daughter that last
Missed that.
half. Yeah, so,
Okay.
okay. Is there anything else today? From good?
I was talking to some veterans of city public life who said there was a time that city manager items after 10:30 would become consent agenda items. So I just thought I'd toss that out there.
That is true, yes.
That's an excellent point.
It was in the city council rules, as I recall.
Okay.
Be interested to know when that changed.
It might still be in there, but we just
Was the
didn't
rolling
talk
calls,
about it
yeah.
as we rolled along the other night. But that's where I think it used to be.
I mean, my vote is always no.
I think it never hurts to look at the rules, at least review them, especially at the beginning of each year.
Yep.
Usually at the beginning of a council term, which we didn't do because we were all familiar, we'd already revised them a few years before, but I'm happy to throw them on the agenda for January and we can
Sure.
have that discussion.
Yep.
I think in your city council rules as well, it sets out how you would like to see the agenda. So just keep in mind, because we still has that wonky piece about public dialogue, which we don't really do, and
Yeah.
so it would be worth probably
Clean
a
up.
fresh look.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will definitely add that to the agenda for
It'd be nice
January.
to get some of this stuff out of the agenda that just doesn't exist.
Yeah, it can be confusing, right,
Well-
to people, like what are we,
I mean,
What is
it's
this
not
item?
confusing to us, but it's just there every meeting, and it's just like, why is it there?
okay? We will
I
do that,
feel like maybe we should be doing it if it's, you know,
if it's there.
if
It's on the
there,
agenda.
But
Yeah.
we're not, yeah.
No. We usually do it around the budget, but that's also a conversation we should probably have here, too, because I don't know how well attended those meetings have been either. So maybe it's, we can revisit that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I know. It's like we changed it so that we went out into the public, and then it just feels like
And no one came.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the only people that came were the
yeah.
past council.
But maybe it needs to be more of a. Yeah, we'll just rethink some of those ideas.
So that's definitely worth looking at the rules again, and,
Right.
because it has the agenda.
It's still in the council rules.
Yes.
Yeah, the Rule 37,
Yeah.
the after 10:30.
Okay.
Yep, city council meeting shall conclude no later than 10:30 PM or at such time as any agenda item being discussed at 10 is acted upon. Any agenda item under the name of the city manager which have not been voted upon by the council as of 10 PM shall be treated thereafter as consent agenda items.
Yeah, we can have that, like, discussion in January about leaving that the way it is.
Actually using the rule.
Using the rule, yes.
Yeah.
So that's helpful. So thank
Which
you.
rule was that?
Did I say
37. Yeah,
there
that's
it is.
helpful.
I already clicked out.
Was it used a lot?
I don't remember it myself. Do you remember it, Suzanne?
It was not used a lot, but I do recall it being used on occasion.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as a practical matter, last agenda, you needed a roll call vote for one of the redoing the bond vote. So you could have done it as a consent, but nice and clean to do it separately.
Yeah, yeah. no,
Yes.
Well, I think a lot of those city manager items, action items, are licenses and leases and encumbrances.
Yeah.
And projecting
Encumbrances,
stuff.
yeah.
That maybe we can take off
Yep.
her action items and leave on something more important, like going back and doing a 2/3 vote on a resolution.
Yep.
Yes, yes. And that might ultimately change the rules. If we remove if we change the encumbrance issues over the next year, then the rules may need to change the rules because the city manager's items will be substantive,
Right.
not just approvals. Yeah. I don't see anyone in the room or on Zoom for public comment. So, and I don't have any other announcements. So if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're adjourned.